directly by this amazing attorney John Feely, who is a very respected attorney. He's been practicing with his law firm for over 30 years and has assisted a lot of diverse clients, including Fortune 500 companies, startups, athletes, artists, you can name it. His firm, Vili Global Law Firm, has become a really big name and a big provider of immigration services. Firsthand, I worked with them, and I love the fact that I'm able to interview you. So before we get into an introduction, I kind of want to lay the ground for you since we only have you for 30 minutes or a little bit less. There's been a lot going on with the new administration, lots of new changes. So there's probably never been a busier time for you in a few years than now. And with that being said, I just love to get your insights on what's happening in the H-1B world.
Thanks, Pierre. Appreciate it. Yeah, glad to be here. Kind of an ever-changing scenario, not just in immigration, but just in America right now with the new administration, from the Doge cuts to of agencies, which we haven't seen an impact on immigration yet, to the deportation and scenarios like that. There's a great deal of, oh, let's call it gotcha. We My son goes to Columbia, and ICE agents were have been at campus trying to get the students to let them into the dorms to without warrants to find people, and it's obviously and it's a frustrating situation, scary situation for them to have to go through that, and they're just regular uh, days of their lives. But we're seeing those deportations happening at churches and across the country, and some showmanship around it, which I think is there to show force and intimidate. So that's right there, but we're not talking about that in our little niche. It's more work visas, and in particular the H-1B, and what does that mean? So um, I'm not sure if the banning of the countries will impact the H-1B or not. There's a travel ban. What that means is people from certain countries can't come to the United States, and this was initiated under the Trump's first administration, and it's coming back. And so there's a series of countries that are going to be 3.0 travel ban countries, and then some that are going to be 4.0 travel ban countries. The 3.0 are going to have more restrictions than the 4.0. Um, uh, in any case, that's there's some stuff like that we can dig into. I don't believe it's gone into effect, but it should be going into effect. It was supposed to be 60 days from a date in January, so coming up pretty soon. In March, we'll see the travel ban come in and what impact that'll have on folks from certain countries. There's a couple more countries like Pakistan and Afghanistan that might be added to the travel ban countries. So, like I said, things are happening all the time right now. H-1B had some positives under the modernization rule that was implemented under the last 3 days of President Biden, and some of it's the broadening of what is going to be an acceptable H-1B as far as the types of degrees. Like, you don't have to have just one degree; you can have multiple degrees that can lead towards a job. In particular types of cases, you want to look at the OOH for that. You can have a sort of a own your own company H-1B. All of these things were always possible, by the way. I think that the Biden administration wanted to codify those into law so that the Trump administration couldn't narrow it. Was what it looks like. But one thing that they put in was taking the site investigation from being volunteer a voluntary thing to be involved in to a mandatory thing that you must do. And so we think we'll see a sharpened and harder version of USCIS coming in this administration when it comes to immigration compliance. Even if it isn't sharper, it's still a serious thing. It was last time, or the last president, and will be under this president. So being ready for site visits is critical. I think the site visit is sort of the H-1B of the earlier eras, right? Like, instead of giving you an opportunity to respond to their questions. They're going to go ask end users, beneficiaries, people that are in the same office complex about questions that they may have about companies, and for one purpose, and that's to revoke visas or deny visas. And so that's something that we need to be ready for. Going into this time, it's what we call head on a swivel. Things are going to be happening all the time without notice, and it's just how do we respond to those, and what do we do? So we're expecting immigration to be harder, expecting it to be more inconsistent, but there are ways to approach it. One of the things that we do, Pierre, is we brief. And instead of writing a cover letter with a table of contents and organizing a case, we like to identify issues up front. That gives us two chances instead of one to deal with it, right? It's answering the RFE up front. So if you know that the client has an issue that immigration might be interested in, there's a strategy in answering that ahead of time. There's also a strategy in not raising it because they may not raise it. So we kind of play that on a case by case, but certain instances that I would raise it every time are if my petitioner had any of the three factors that would trigger an RFE or a denial. And those are how old it is, how much money it generates in revenues, and how many employees it has. So any of those three things are sort of the automatic triggers for an FD&S investigation or an RFE. So if you do have a young company, but it's well funded, there's no law or even reasoning that would say not talking about its funding source. If it's a spinoff of a successful company, that's also worthy of taking. If they've won great contracts already, that's also worthy, right? So anything that can give the company some give some more evidence to the adjudicator to understand that just because the company's young or hasn't generated much revenue yet, that it can, right? And again, if it's a tech company that's doing development, a lot of times it's going to be a while before it makes money. So that's where the funding sources come in. If it's a staffing company, having good contracts would do that, right? Another thing that's a reason that investigations happen or they go from being investigations into findings of fraud or the size of the locations where the workers are to work. So the first thing is where is the worker supposed to work? Well, the document that indicates that is the LCA filed with the Department of Labor 7 to 10 days before filing the green card. That rules. So if that document says 123 Main Street, there better be place for them to work at 123 Main Street. And sometimes we have some clients that they want to put them there for a minute and then they're going to send them off to a third party or whatever. But if there's no workspace and they show up, then that can be a problem. Another thing that's been a problem is when they show up and there's nobody there. And so, companies that are mostly staffing that may not have, a lot of direct work, but are placing people at third parties and have very small operations, those companies are going to be looked at hard or have been looked at hard, and you got to be able to be ready to address that. So that is have enough space to have all the employees you're going to have. So if you're asking for 10 H-1Bs, even though they're not here yet, there needs to be place for 10 H-1Bs to work. There's some thoughts. Any
Thank you so much,
questions or
John.
comments,
I do
Pierre?
think that it's very interesting how the changes are coming back. The travel ban is something that I've witnessed and impacted me directly. So I really hope whatever moves moving forward is a little bit fair to those. Yeah, and nothing's ever fair, but I do hope that the changes are a little bit more um, where we can be prepared for them. And I think
Yeah.
being prepared for changes, you can never be more prepared than working with an attorney. How does your firm handle the changing, landscape, and what makes you better than every other attorney out there?
I don't know if I'm better than any other attorney, but I think an attorney's role is to be knowledgeable in the law. And so the first thing that we do, and others should, is pay attention to what's happening. The Trump administration uses White House mandates, policy protocols, as opposed to Congress passing a law. When Congress passes a law, they put language out and they allow stakeholders to ask questions about it, and then they promulgate it, they pass it, and it has to be passed by Congress and signed by the president, and then it usually is implemented sometime in the future, right? So you have an opportunity to discuss it with them and get your comments done, and they have to follow procedures, and if they don't, then the law doesn't work, right? Well, with a presidential proclamation, one, you don't see it coming, and two, it's just there. And sometimes they hold up in court, and sometimes they don't, depending on what they're saying, right? So a presidential proclamation is less powerful than a law. They can't overdo a law, right? They can provide some guidance because effectively what a president is the agencies, right? So USCIS policy memos, but this particular president likes to make presidential proclamations instead of having the agency do policy memorandum, right? And so a lot of those are because they're political things like travel bans of countries. These travel bans are pulled out of a concern for national um, security against terrorism. That's the thing about it. And when someone or a president uses national security as a backdrop, that's when rights are taken in the best interest of the national security interest. That's what's happening here. So what happens if you get a ban from an entire country? Um, Whether they're good or bad people, right? As opposed to just not letting bad people in. And so there's that it's sometimes the net is too big and it's hanging up otherwise approvable cases of otherwise good people and good companies that want to have them. And that's what we battle. So we try to do what we can to see whatever issues coming and either see what strategies have been successful in the past, or if it's a new situation, what strategies would we like to use, and will they work? And if they don't work, can we take it to court, or what are we going to do about it? So that's what a good firm should do, is look at these changing things, stay abreast of them as best you can, and then address them as best you can.
Beautifully said. Thank you so much, John. I do think that there is, from all the conversations that we've had, I think if you have a great legal team behind you, appealing a case and taking the measure of an RFE is important, especially if you state it correctly. Tell me a little bit about premium processing. A question came in earlier on our YouTube chat, which I didn't fully understand. So please, for anyone asking questions, you can ask them in writing, but give us a little bit more context. Someone asked if premium processing will continue. Um, is that
Yeah.
in
I
accordance
mean,
with
I
what
haven't
H-1B?
heard that they're getting rid of it, and it's expanded over the years to handle a lot more cases than uh,
Because in
than it has in the
2017 or
past.
2018, I recall that it was paused momentarily. Do you recall that? Do you remember that when they had a lot of like a big load in 2017? I'm trying to look it up because I
Well,
I,
so
I could
what's
swear.
happened over a period of years is premium processing for additional types of cases that weren't originally there, and the so that's a good thing. Now it's also the increases in prices have gone up exponentially. It was $1,000 and 1,400, now 2,880. Not an inexpensive endeavor, and each case needs to have it. But a lot more cases do. So it has a benefit. I mean, I can remember when they first introduced it. Before they introduced it, USCIS said, "There's no way we can get a case done as quickly as you guys want." And they put in premium processing and they started getting them done in 2 weeks. So we always knew they could. Um, but it's a tool, and you can use it. Sometimes it's not always an advantage though. I mean, we see um, the most risky one is when we use it in EB1 extraordinary ability cases, because they're so big and important. USCIS often dumps them back on us um, and just says everything doesn't work. So then we got to go back. But we got one recently where they found that the gentleman we were representing had met 6 of the 8 criteria. You only need to meet 3, and still said it didn't meet the final merits test. So I don't know, right? I mean, we litigated and won when they said four was, with a guy that had four. Now this was an AI architect from a really big um, company most people have heard of, and he was being paid a fortune and had done all sorts of amazing things and had invented some technology for one of these really big companies that was being utilized all over the world. And the value of what he had done on a daily basis was in the millions, right? So it was weird they didn't. And what we do in our cases is we have experts analyze these things. Yeah, I know. Hold on. They they sorry guys, I just got popped his head in to talk about a call. But the thing was is that there were four. We had seen some cases brought to USCIS with three, having met three, and I'd never seen four before. Anyway, how we were able to structure this is that we had experts analyze our technology, analyze the best technology that was out there in the world, analyze this technology, say what was different, say what was better, and they just didn't analyze it. And there's a Supreme Court case that says that expert analysis is evidence. So what that meant is they didn't analyze some of the evidence. Well, in that case, we got USCIS to reopen the case and then approve it, which is what they'll do many times if they're just wrong. And a matter of fact, that just happened to us in another case last week, and we're very happy with the result, where the USCIS had followed its policy for a long time and then changed its policy and denied our guy a green card. But we were able to get them to reopen it, even though the law allowing them to do it was pretty solid in their favor. The U.S. attorney and USCIS kind of came to their senses and said, you know what, we're here for justice, and it's not just to turn this case down. So pretty good win, and so that's why litigation is an important tool, and briefing to support your claims if they go to litigation is what we do. And in the Trump administration, that's more important than ever, because a lot of the decisions and a lot of the laws or policies that are implemented, or they don't go through the processes, and many times they may be in violation of existing law. And whereas you can't convince an adjudicator to change your mind, you might be able to get a judge to do it.
Spot on. Thank you so much for that. I think that gives
Yeah.
a lot of context for understanding that it's not a one set system. You still have a right. You still have a right to question, to litigate. And I didn't know this, but your firm does litigate. So for everyone watching, all types of litigation, Vili Global does that now.
We think there'll be more of a demand, going into this next administration and in the past. And yeah, that's what we do, because it's a place you can go to do it. Not a lot of people want to do it in immigration because of the cost. Litigation's not an inexpensive endeavor, but sometimes you just have to. It's the only chance you have. For this gentleman we just helped, he was out of choices. So it was good that it came out the right way.
Excellent, John. Another question that's coming in is your overview on the new system. Is there a new system? And again, please, guys,
Yeah,
if you
there's an
can.
online system, and I'm glad you brought that up. We like it. We were hesitant last year. We definitely didn't put all of our cases through it. We had a sampling of them. Good things about the system. The online system, it's $50 cheaper. Second benefit, you don't have to pay shipping costs. We use FedEx. It's an expensive endeavor. So cheaper for the filing fees, cheaper for sending it. You're saving probably about 150, $200, maybe more. Most importantly is the decisions have been good, and we found a lower percentage of RFEs, and didn't have any denials. We didn't expect any denials, but in any case, they seem to like their own system, and so we would rather do it than not do it. And with our technology at visas.ai, we can gather this information and then move it over into the government's filing system efficiently. So we love it because we love technology, and so yeah, it's a cool thing. I would suggest it heavily.
Beautiful. Thank you very much for that. And then any closing remarks on what you think the future of this year's cap season looks like? Any
Well,
sort
we're
of
in the
conversation
yeah.
you've had?
Sorry to cut you off. We're in the cap season. It started on the 7th. We're about a week in, a little less than a week in, and everything seems to be going well. We won't know the answers until April 1st. So that's the situation. And but sign up. Don't forget to sign up. You got until the 21st. It's only 14 days long, so we're about 9 days out as of the recording of this. So if you got any questions about it, contact us, and we're glad to help.
Beautiful. And then for anyone that's interested in contacting attorney John Veely and his firm, please reach out to via email information. That's all the way information at veelylaw.com. That's VELIELAW.com. You can book a strategy session. If I heard if you're an enterprise, you can qualify for a complimentary one, correct?
Yeah, for sure. We're glad to talk to companies at no charge. Glad to do a what we call a strategy session on the company, right? Is the company going to have issues filing H-1Bs because of it? And it could be how the company's structured, size of the company, where how it's doing business, also the types of jobs, and where they're getting them and what kind of projects they have. So glad to look at the company issues. Would love to do business with more companies or anybody, obviously, for that reason. But um, you know, companies free strategy sessions for you.
Excellent. John, thank you so much for this, conversation. I do think that this is something that we have to continue talking about. So for everyone watching, next Wednesday at the same time, we'll hold probably one of our last webinars directly at the H-1B cap season. And then, of course, everything that's going to come forward. It's very, very important from all the conversations that we've had for you to have a good legal team behind you. This is a time where you don't necessarily want, it sounds like, to be on your own or to be with someone who is in a professional. And I do think the advantage of your firm is that it feels and sounds like you handle so many cases that you see patterns as they emerge, and
Do
then
and
you help.
we know how to look for them. There will be new things. So on that, I gotta run. But
Thank you so
thanks
much.
everybody, and thank you, Pierre. Great time.
Thank you,
Bye.
guys. Be safe.